I want to ask you, it seems to me that one of the core issues that they would want to get to in this kind of a hearing when it comes to the breakdown here, I mean, a lot of people, very seasoned intelligence officers, people on the military side, have said there's no way that over the course of 7 hours, somebody didn't give some kind of a stand-down order, or at least say, look, we're not going in there with all that we could to help these guys. They're going to have to essentially on the ground figure it out themselves. Wouldn't you need the most senior administration figures possible testifying about that in front of Congress to get those answers? I mean, if you're trying to identify a breakdown in the chain of command like that, don't you need the commanders there?
Absolutely. And right now there's been just a series of finger pointing. You have the White House pointing to one agency, the State Department pointing to the Pentagon, the CIA pointing to other agencies. Very confusing situation. It's clear that prior to the election last Tuesday, there was an effort to try and keep a tight lid on anything related to this. Petraeus kind of violated that prime directive by issuing the CIA timeline, which again created more questions than answers. You definitely need the top people to say what's going on.
So Bill, let me sort of clarify what you were suggesting about the timeline. Are you suggesting that someone sort of pulled the pin on this personal grenade to blow up David Petraeus so he could not be an effective witness with regards to Benghazi?
Well, that's not the official version, but that's certainly what it looks like. It looks to me, and I've been covering Washington for over 30 years, it looks like a political takedown. In other words, they had this information. The White House is claiming they didn't know of this investigation until November 7th. Once Eric Holder was told about this, I'm absolutely confident that in the height of a tight presidential election campaign that he would have told someone in the White House. Someone in the White House absolutely had to know about this. There are different ways to use that information. It may have been a botched blackmail attempt to try to influence Petraeus' testimony. In my experience, generals do not respond well to that kind of political pressure. My guess is he probably tried to preempt any kind of pressure and said, I'm bailing out, although that doesn't comport with the so-called official version that's kind of coming out in the last day.
So, Buck, Bill's suggesting that Petraeus may have some very interesting things to say should he appear before Congress. So now the suggestion is he would have to be subpoenaed to show up before Congress. Bill also said it's not whether or not he testifies, but what he says. Do you see any change in his obligation from when he is in office versus now just being a civilian standing before Congress? Will that change his testimony in any way?
I mean, technically, he no longer serves at the pleasure of the president, so you don't have that issue. But it's really not clear. I mean, we're sort of surmising what his testimony may be. And I would say this: the only concern that, or rather, this theory that's being floated around a lot, that the White House sort of knew this and allowed him to go into this position, is that then you are very much you're putting yourself at risk for having your CIA director. This could have come out before the election, is what I'm trying to say. I mean, you can't really control that kind of a thing. So to me, that seems perhaps a little bit suspect that they would have known this well in advance. I think they know it maybe a month or two in advance of the election, certainly, but way back, I'm not sure that would have happened.
It can also be in your back pocket, and it's your way to control your CIA director to have that kind of compromise.
This is all cloak and dagger kind of stuff we're talking about.
I'm also I'm confused as to why someone like Eric Cantor in his position would have sat on this for weeks.
I think tremendous respect for David Petraeus, honestly. I think that's probably
is that it? Just
I
not
honestly,
wanting to look political? Because this could have been very useful.
He's really kind of become America's general, and I think that someone like Eric Cantor probably thought to themselves, I just don't want to be the guy that drops that hammer.
But is it possible? Do you believe that Eric Cantor didn't tell anyone else in GOP leadership? So they all had immense respect for Petraeus and decided not to talk about this at all?
What do you think?
Well, one thing that hasn't really come up a whole lot is the relationship between Petraeus and Obama. I mean, we used to hear a lot of the salvos that were being fired at one another, and perhaps, Bill, you can get into this if you're able to. I mean, what is the relationship like between the president and the general? I think that it's been fairly rocky. Is that right?
Well, I can tell you one thing. I don't know how close their relationship is, but I do know that Petraeus has been nearly invisible in the past year that he has been the CIA director, and that's very unusual. I mean, he did maybe testify behind closed doors, but it's very unusual that someone in that position would take such a low-profile position. On the other hand, Petraeus has kind of reoriented the CIA towards the drone warfare in the battle against terrorism. That's kind of been his hallmark. There have been a lot of complaints from CIA that he's taken the agency in a too much in that direction of a military strike operation versus traditional spying and other types of covert action.
So, Bill, if you could clarify.